So this is the second in a series of videos on Liang-style Bagua concepts. The first video focused on Dingshi Baguazhang, which is the fixed posture circle walking. And that we spent a lot of time in that video discussing the basic process of walking the circle and how it's applied in various ways. In the first video, we emphasized fixed postures, which means holding the upper body in a fixed posture or changing very simply between fixed postures while continuously walking in a circle. In this video, we'll be discussing the Laobazhang, which means the old 8 palms. Most styles of Bagua, either they call it Laobazhang or they have an 8 basic palm changes. And this is the step up from Dingshi, where instead of focusing on fixed movement while circling, now the focus is on actually the changes between the movements. And so naturally, when you have changes between postures, the key point is the transition points. And we'll focus on how those are applied in self-defense techniques, but you'll also see that each palm has a different take on a basic principle. So it's thought that originally the founder, Deng Haichuan, taught 2 or 3 changes only, which would be a single changing palm with a horizontal circular force, a double changing palm, which has a double change of direction, but it also emphasizes a vertical spiral. And that if you have the vertical and the horizontal, from those you can create all the other spirals. Some people think the third palm change was simply to turn back off the center of the circle, and that would create 3 basic palm changes. The other 5 are just extrapolations of the first 3 with different types of footwork, different types of tactical considerations. So as in the first video, I'll show the formal movements, and then we'll break down what principles they elucidate for self-defense techniques and how those principles come into play in specific situations. It should be mentioned that there are also linear movements that go with each palm change. So the Laobazhang, the single palm change, has a single movement associated with it, which is done in a linear fashion up and down the floor. First of all, it takes one out of thinking that one always has to make a circular step. Sometimes a direct forward step can be made. Secondly, it takes one back to the most basic principle of the palm, which is sometimes lost in the circling motion. And third, it can be a very valuable self-defense technique or bridging technique to close distance between you and the opponent. So these linear techniques also have their own specific applications, which show things that are hidden within the circular palms. And they teach some of the power-generating dynamics for striking with the hands. One of the key points in Laobazhang is the opening of the form. And this can actually be done as a Qigong, Neigong exercise, as a series of standing postures to develop root and body structure, or to test your root and body structure by having someone push against you while you're holding the postures. It is also essentially a stripped-down version of the so-called single palm change. Starting from when we start the form or when we start our solo practice, you're starting from what's called the void posture, where you're creating an emptiness inside yourself from which you can detect the first stirrings of the movement of the form beginning. So going from stillness to motion and exploring every little piece of that change. In the void posture, all the alignments we talked about in the first DVD are the same. The head erect, chin tucked slightly, tongue on the roof of the mouth behind the upper teeth, shoulders relaxed, hips, a slight bend in the hips, tail sinks, knees bend, feet flat on the floor. And let the mind be empty, let the weight be even so there's no stress on the leg muscles to hold you up. And from that posture, you try and feel the beginnings of a spiral movement. Which begins in your spine, at the lower spine, and then transmits into the arms, allowing you to step forward. Into the old monk holds out the alms bowl. So to make it bigger or more gross, as the spine turns, the arms start to swing, creating almost a yin-yang shape, and then the foot is able to step forward. One palm presses down, one palm presses up. This is the same posture that Xingyi practitioners call Santi Shi, or the three-body posture. And it basically is teaching you about heaven and earth, yin and yang, one palm up, one palm down, one palm twisting in one direction, one palm twisting in the other direction. That same twist is going through the legs. So one leg is twisting in, the other one's twisting out. That spiral goes up the spine, through the shoulders, into the arms. So right from the beginning, we're setting a spiral force through the body and projecting it outward to the front. This can be done as its own standing posture, where people hold it generally for 9 breaths, and then they switch sides and do 9 breaths on the other side. And that could be done for half an hour or even an hour. So once again, from the void posture, or Wuji, starting a spiral in the lower spine, which shifts the weight to the left foot, and stepping out into the three-body posture. Or in Bagua, we call it the old monk holds out the alms bowl. So there's a forward intention to it. From there, we spiral. The foot toes out. The arm turns. The left hand pierces underneath to Kobu, hook step. If we look at it from the side, this hand is reaching to the maximum under the armpit. This hand is reaching to the maximum in the other direction. This hand is twisting upward to the maximum, and this hand is twisting in the opposite direction. And then spiraling up, opening the step and twisting to the millstone posture. And this is another standing posture that can be done side to side, holding it for 9 breaths. So let's look at the forces involved here. This is an example of one of the key points in Bagua. The way you're able to constantly initiate change is by having movement in all directions at the same time. And this creates a potential energy in every possible direction, as long as you create it with spirals. So if we look, we start with a spiral, which creates a potential energy to twist to one side. We turn that into a series of spirals. One going up, one going down, one going right, one going left. The same thing is translating through the whole body, through my legs and back. And that means at the same time as I'm turning out, I'm turning in. At the same time this palm is turning down, it has a quality of turning up. At the same time as my back is turning to the right, it's turning to the left. Similarly, my legs are extending upward, pushing the spine and head upward, while the body sinks downward. So we have a potential energy up and down, right and left, spiraling left, and then front and back. If I pick up the foot, you're loaded to take a step. If I pick up the back foot, I'm loaded to fall into that step. So with that plus the side-to-side spirals, the foot can, by stepping and emphasizing one of those spirals, you can go in any direction. The same thing occurs here. We have a wrapping force and we have a twisting force. At the same time, we have this feeling of pushing outward against resistance, of opening, and the wrapping force contains within it this spiraling force. So this means that no matter how far in I go, there's always a spiral that takes me to another position. And this becomes key, if Aaron comes up, in positions where I'm caught in a bad place. If he closes me in to the maximum, till my arms are against my chest, I still have a spiral force that allows me to turn him. So on a bigger level, he can close me in all the way, but it just turns me into another spiral, because that spiral's already within the first one. And some famous Bagua practitioners, Zheng Renjiao, talks about this as having Jin, strength, and Yi, intention, at the same time in 2 directions. So there's an interior wrapping force, but at the same time there's an external opening force. There's an internal twisting force, but at the same time there's an external spiraling, drilling force. And all 4 of these forces have to be present in every move, created through the entire body by the structure of the legs and the twisting of the body. So if we look at this form again, standing in the Wu Ji, turning the spine. Already we're starting the twisting forces and spiraling in all, right and left, pressing up, pressing down, moving forward, moving back, and then turning to this movement called hiding flower under leaf, twisting in opposite directions, closing but opening, twisting but spiraling, and then opening to the millstone posture. So these movements, the beginning, the opening of the form, are performed to start the form each time, but they are also their own individual exercise. So in summary, what you want to look for in this throughout the techniques that we're showing is constantly these four forces, which is again this sense of drilling or piercing, this sense of twisting, wrapping, which can happen in different ways. We can wrap this way, we can wrap this way, and this sense of opening or extending outward, or what some people call overturning. So many Bagua practitioners who've done Xingyi call this rise, drill, fall, overturn. So it's similar to the ideas in Xingyi of rising and drilling, falling, overturning, and striking downward. This would be the same here. Right? Wrapping inward, rising upward, extending outward, twisting, overturning. These are all names for the same thing, but we'll discuss them in terms of twisting, wrapping, drilling, and opening or overturning. So how do those apply? I demonstrated a little bit of an idea about how to use wrapping and turning it into drilling, but in any technique, you're going to see to some degree these forces. So if we take a simple technique where maybe a punch comes out, I'm using drilling or piercing palm to the face. Right? As he parries that, I'm using twisting to turn him. I'm using wrapping, and we can come around this way, to suck the arms underneath, and then I'm using overturning and opening to spiral and throw. And you can see some of the things that we did in Dingshi come into play here. The same ideas of leading his hand, drawing him forward into the empty space, breaking his structure, using wrapping to enter his structure and to tie up the arms, and using overturning to create two spirals that take him off his route. And this will be the theme throughout this DVD. So we're going to break down the beginning of the form, which is the opening section. Again, to review, we had the Wuji spiraling to create the three body posture, or the old monk holds up the alms bowl, turning the front foot and spiraling the arm to hide the flower under the leaf, and then piercing, drilling upward, overturning to the millstone posture. So each of these can be used individually, or they can be used in a chain sequence, and we'll take it step by step. The simplest thing is if we're on guard, set up the other way, and I can use this as an attack to draw his hand, or as an attack this way to draw a response, or if he attacks, it can be a parry and a poke. So either poking or striking with like a whipping hand strike to draw some reaction from the opponent. Very often we like the opponent to attack us and we evade and draw him into the void, but sometimes if he's not attacking, we have to do something to draw a response. So the old monk is one of the simplest ways to do that. You can do it off the back leg or off the front leg. So in the initial exchange, Nelson's throwing something. I'm attacking with the old monk to pierce at the eyes. By threatening the eyes, I force him to put something out. And what I'm trying to get him to do is to actually cross his center line. So rather than attacking in the middle where he can do a very simple parry, let's just turn this way, where he doesn't really have to cross his center line, by attacking more to the side, he's tempted to cross the line to make the stop. All right, and we can turn back here. The second move is this hiding flower under leaf. So this has multiple applications. The simplest we did in Dingshi, which is to come in against the arm while our foot traps the leg, or to look at it on the other side. This one, he makes the stop. I turn to catch this arm, step in and trap the leg, either stepping in front or behind, and hiding the flower. So now we see these oppositional forces spiraling. This spiral draws him. This spiral also draws him and cuts, but it contains a forward motion. And at the same time, there's an opening action. So if we run into a problem with him defending me, I have force against that. He's not going to push me all the way to here. All right, so simple application. Pierce, when he blocks, come in and break the arm and disrupt the balance. Hidden within that is a second move, which is in the hide the flower, is that I'm attacking here. So as I go to break, if he bends his elbow, this attacks, and this elbow attacks. So we're breaking his structure this way. Particularly if we stepped behind, we can break the structure very easily, right, by doing this kind of action. So if I came in with this, switch to here, and he bends his elbow, I'm following that action. This one is cutting this way, which pulls his ribs around and twists him. This one is cutting this way to threaten the eyes, which he has to push off. And we can make that the throw. All right, so done a little quicker. Let's actually switch sides here, get another angle on it. So throwing this side, I'm coming in here and breaking this way, or throwing this way. All right, again, one more time. Break, right, poke the eyes. If he defends by bending the arm, throwing down. Leaning on the mountain or playing the peepaw. So this is another extension of it. Same movement, but this time I can't slip to his elbow because he's too strong, or maybe he's pulling this one back. So I move into him and lean on him. This arm spiraling down, this arm spiraling up. So here we're emphasizing that drilling force before we overturn and extend. We're also emphasizing the wrapping force, this wrapping energy. So while we're wrapping, we're threatening here, either by shooting the fingers or by controlling the arm, and that in of itself can be a throw. So again, a little quicker, off the punch. And then if we take that one step farther, so we try and come in for this, Nelson pulls this arm out. It just becomes an off-balance technique with my leg trapping his. All right, so again, I come in as I try and get this technique. He pulls his hands out. We're just twisting him and throwing him. Or, similarly, I come in to do the first technique and he stops me. So I twist out. I drill and overturn. This one's a little harder to see, so we'll do it again. If I come in underneath and he pulls back to use that hand against me, I'm going to come inside here. This is attacking the neck. We can strike points, but we're doing the millstone posture with drilling and overturning. If I fail to drill, if I just try and go to here, I'm bringing his elbow into me, and he can change his footing, just step through my stance, and break my balance. But if I drill up, if when I'm here and he stops me, I drill up, I take his spine up and then twist him, and the throw can be made that way. So these are all simple extrapolations of the opening move. And what we want to keep in mind, again, is these oppositional forces. It's not enough just to hold his hand and stick my hand out. I'm creating this spiral. So from the moment we meet, I'm already engaging his whole body and having to deal with that spiral. And I often force him to plant his root. So I know where his step is, I know where his root is, and I can enter into it to throw. Okay, so now we're going to look at the single changing palm, which is the first palm change when we're walking, toeing in. As we toe in, the tail sets down, which drops the palm root, coiling out of the right leg and hip to pierce. And now, unlike the old monk, this is both are piercing up to drive into the opponent, and then pierce again. And then hide the flower underleaf. The millstone posture. Okay, so from the other side, similarly, toeing in. As this leg unfolds, coiling out of the hip. Turning both palms over so they're both twisting in opposite directions. And then piercing. One palm up, one palm down, hiding the flower. Millstone posture. Okay, so right away the opening move is a little different than the old monk. In this one, we're opening right here. So from hands up position, when he comes out, I'm using the step to shear. Right? Let's do it maybe on this side. No, just give me the other hand. So as he comes in, I'm meeting and shearing. This one is covering the elbow. My step moves behind. And it's like I'm cutting across the throat as I move forward. So we're using this wedge to break the stance. So I could be from a situation where this hand again, I'm turning from the side and coming in, right? Shearing right through. This one was on the elbow. This time it's skidded to the back and then following through. So that's just the opening move. Again, we're using coiling off the leg, spirals to bring the arm down and to drive me in. And then going right through his stance like a wedge. So at speed, I think. The second move is if we have this and then we step through and pierce. So if this one doesn't work because he forces me out, then I'm piercing to the inside. Okay, I'm throwing these by Nelson's face, but the pierces can be to the eyes or to the throat, or they can just be a shearing palm like this. So very simple application. Our hands meet, we shear, and we turn to the millstone. And this is something we did in Dingshi, and we did a little bit in the old monk section, but here we're coming straight in off of it and rotating him to throw. Okay, then lastly, if I come in here and he stops me, bringing the arm back to break and bringing him back to throw again. Okay, so just sequentially, if one move doesn't work, I can't get this one in, I enter. He takes his arm out or he passes me, I take it back, and then we take it to the outside and throw. So one more time with that one quicker, right? Yeah, sometimes that's it. You don't get to the last move. Alternatively, just a thought about the single palm change. If we just look at it broken down out of the specific looking applications that follow the form. If he's throwing punches, left, right, this is the single palm change. In essence, I'm trying to do this. As he throws the second punch, again, I'm doing the single palm change. So it's like I started to walk this way, but the second punch comes, so I walk the other way and go to the center of mass. All right? Because the foot is free, I have the potential to kick. Right? I'm going to take out the legs, depending on how he sets up his stance. So as long as I go back to my mud stepping that we covered in the Dingshi DVD, I have the capability to change my step to accommodate to different positions. So again, on a jab cross, it's quick, right? Just moving into the stance. Now we're going to look at the single movement exercise and applications of it that go with the single palm change. So this is merely a linear representation of the circular form, but in doing that, it gives us some other thoughts about application, and it develops a forward driving power in the body by the use of the linear stepping. So from the old monk, stepping forward, this hand's going to drill up, and this hand's going to strike forward with the palm. When we run out of room, we turn, strike, step, step, follow. So again, or it can be done walking. With the emphasis on the drilling and the striking. And while it doesn't at first look like the single palm change, you can see that if I carry this action to its end point, as I rotate the body, I start to move to the millstone posture. So one way that students practice it is to walk with it and then turn one into the circular stepping. So if Nelson comes out, we'll do a few applications. Again, from a point of view of our hands meeting with the right, I'm stepping in, and this is now, instead of our emphasis on turning and twisting him, the emphasis is going to be more on striking the center. All right, or if we do it from the left side, coming in and striking the center. Okay, whether it be here or here. It can be done as a poke. It can be done as a strike or like a whipping strike this way. So again, coming in, building off of that, second view would be, of course, Nelson's going to counter me. So this hand strikes. All right? And if we think of it as not that I'm standing still and striking, but I'm merely, when I'm inside, I'm merely walking to another one of these. It's much more effective like that. So as our hands meet, I'm coming in once and then twice. Another idea is if I come inside and he pushes me strongly by fading his body, by creating a void, I counter by walking into a new position and striking the back. So if we look at it from the other side, if I'm coming in, he creates a void, I just step to the other side and strike. All right, and then we can see within that application, where's the millstone is right in here. Right? So we could use the millstone posture again to off-balance him. And that takes us out to here. So if we look at those two again, coming to the inside, our hands meet, coming in, and he presses me out, I'm coming to the outside. Or coming out of the, going into the millstone posture, so our hands meet here, I'm breaking here and throwing. Now we'll take a look at the double changing palm, or also known as the double palm change. Some people call it the covering palm. So to look at the form again, spiraling, turning, we have twisting and drilling. How twisting goes into drilling. Drilling goes into wrapping. Right? This is the covering hand. The character Guy means like covering a big pot with a big lid. So covers my top of my head. And this is our wrapping force. We're wrapping the forces around the body and then pressing down as the other hand pierces out. And then twisting, and one hand twisting inward, one hand drilling outward, wrapping, expanding outward, opening, overturning. So if we look at it again, piercing, while the other hand turns or inward, twists inward, spiraling and wrapping overhead, drilling outward as this hand wraps inward, wrapping inward, and overturning, extending, opening outward. Okay, so if Nelson comes out, we'll look at some simple applications of this. The simplest ones is coming into the opponent from the side and using the covering palm to strike. So this could be done here to strike downward as I turn. Right, so just from here, walking in, striking down, as this hand drags him around. So what we have to keep in mind is in the form, this one goes to an outward drill. And it's going to continue whether I hold his arm or not. This one's going to move to open, right? It's just his arm is in the way, so I only get to here before he's going down. Right? We can also use it to attack the elbow. So it's basically the same technique, attacking the elbow down. And this, taking him here. All right, so that's sometimes useful when there's two opponents. You can hit one and move into the other. Alternatively, if Aaron comes up, Nelson can do a wrapping body throw, which uses this part of the turn, right? Where we're wrapping around the body. So if you do it slow one time. When he steps in, he makes contact, his ribs to the opponent's lower ribs. His leg is turning inward, which cuts Aaron's stance. And then he starts to twist back the other way. And as his hand wraps behind him, the other hand wraps this way. So initially, when he meets Aaron's force, it feels to Aaron like he's cutting this way. And Aaron tends to, his initial tendency is to resist back into me and back in this direction. And then I just turn the way Aaron's turning. And that spirals me back the other way. So one more time at faster speed. And then we can look at this as a two-opponent thing. So I showed one if you're there. If I move into Nelson and I see that Aaron's coming, I can use this to figure out where I need to step. And it can be almost any. I could even just use it to get to here so that I get Nelson in front of me, or to throw Nelson into him, right? So that I have time to reset myself. Or if I move into Nelson and make a false attack and then move into Aaron, I stop Nelson's forward movement because he hesitates there, and I use his force to move into Aaron and get behind him. All right, so those are simple ideas about changing and changing back if you're fighting more than one person. So now we'll look at the linear form of the double palm change, which is called the yin striking palm. A polite way of saying the groin striking palm, or striking from bottom to top. From the old monk, holds up the alms bowl, stepping forward and striking. One hand makes a curved parry, the other one strikes from low to high. Turning the same as before by toeing in. And a little bit faster with running steps. So what it's emphasizing is the moment before the hands turn over in the double palm change. This moment from going from low to high. So if we look at it with a partner, very simple, the most simple technique. He comes in to punch, I'm cutting inward. Right? So I have this inward twisting and upward striking at the same time. And the upward striking is basically this path that takes me to the rise, drill, fall, overturn, or the drilling, overturning hand. You can see then if I can get this one, immediately it takes me to the millstone posture. So we've gone through twisting, wrapping, drilling, overturning all in one step. So again, from here, moving straight in to slap the groin. If I miss, I just continue on through. All right, similarly, instead of going to the outside, I might want to go to the inside, which means I have to worry about this other hand. So this one could come up, but it also shows how we have to keep a threat here. Right? This is always keeping the inward wrapping, twisting force. Even as we move in, if Nelson tries to press it back, he guides it into his face, and he brings me in with him. Right? It would be the same if I took it to the outside. This hand is threatening here, right, while this one threatens low. So we'll look at it going inside, moving here, this one keeping the threat. If he gets away from that or parries the hand, I'm guiding it to the outside. All right, again, this hand is one of the keys, while this one comes underneath. All right, and then you can make a throw from there. So again, if we look at that one coming in and out, all right? And then lastly, using it more as an upper attack from low to high, either with the palm, the fist, the elbow. If I sink the elbow in and he defends it, it's by rolling the elbow. Let's show that from this angle. So again, we have upward drilling. And then when I'm stopped here, I'm using the twisting force of the elbow. So if the elbow comes up, it's that force that takes him initially. And then this one can strike low here and throw. Or it can create another upward strike. So if we look at it one more time, either off this punch coming in here. So we have twisting. We have upward drilling. Right? If it's defended, we have twisting again. And this one starts to wrap inward. Whether it's going to be to grab his leg, whether it's going to be to take his arm. And that's, again, the wrapping force. So at speed, simply coming in here. And then taking it here. Okay, so the third palm change, the body turning palm, is simply a single palm change that instead of toeing in and turning, turns back the other way, to the outside of the circle. So if my circle is this way, and I'm walking around it, we toe in or toe out, it just depends on the opponent, and we spin back and shoot the palm so that we have this same configuration. The key is that the palm should, because it's piercing out and going horizontally at the same time, or it's using the drilling force plus the opening force. If we open too much, we're off balance. So it has to have a little more of the drilling and a little less of the opening. And then hide the flower underneath, turn and walk with the millstone posture. So on the other side, turning, cutting across, and at the very end, my palm turns down. I just pass my front foot, hide the flower underleaf, and turn back and walk the other way. So most of these are going to be variations of the single palm change. The difference is that we're showing a position a situation where I've been caught in a bad position. So if Nelson has caught me off guard, or even if he's striking my face and he's driving through with his step on me, I simply want to rotate the body to the outside against him. So this outside turn can be used, and it's whether I toe in to do it like the form, or whether I toe out is simply going to depend on where my feet are. If my weight is forward when Nelson catches me, then I'm going to have to move with this foot. If my weight is a little bit back yet, I'm going to turn this foot and walk behind him. So we really see here, going back to the Dingshi, this principle of the spiraling of the body to make him like a top. His force comes in, the spiraling draws him into the void while I spin around behind him. All right, we also see that we're using this twisting force into the drilling and overturning forces. All right, what we haven't seen is the wrapping force yet, which is going to come up in follow-up maneuvers. So in any position where he pushes me, it doesn't matter. Just using this idea. He pushes me again in my center, just using this like a door opening and closing. What's important to remember with this, the common mistake, is if I overextend and he ducks, I'm going to end up like this. And he's going to come up the middle with an uppercut. So if I spin and he ducks, my hand should stop right here. Where if he comes up, my hands are still right here. Right? And this is a key point when you execute the form, that you practice it that way. Let's look at one other version of that. If I just cut him off directly. So in the first palm change, we had something where we cut off with this hand. Here I'm using this crossing of the hands to make the cut. And then I can use the wrap. And now drilling and overturning to off balance. So a little bit more at speed. If he comes into punch, I'm striking here and then throwing him down. So the single movement practice for this is called the opening palm from the old monk. This hand's going to pierce through, which again is this wrapping force. And this one is twisting, and then opening and a pushing. And turning same as before with a toe in. So we can do it a little more fluidly with running steps. Against an opponent, the simplest application off a punch, coming in to attack the face. So we're parrying and then we're using this drilling and wrapping while this hand starts to twist the other way to create a pushing force. All right, it can attack the back. Let's take this side now. So this one can cover the elbow, this one can take the face, or we can just strike the ribs. All right, similarly, let's take that one more time, actually. Nelson can take it down underneath me because his shoulders are lower than mine. As I come in, he can move in underneath and uproot me to the side. And then we can look at it one other way, which is from the outside, using this technique where instead of the hand pressing his elbow, I press the hip and the head at the same time and simply walk through. So we break the alignment at the sacroiliac joint in the hip as we bend and twist the spine. And instead of trying to push him this way, I simply have to go straight to shock my force out. All right, so at speed, picking up from the outside, taking him down. So let's look at the fourth palm change, the chopping palm, which emphasizes P, chopping or splitting hand. So walking the circle, starting with a toe-in step and drawing back to chop. All right, so if we look at the forces again, wrapping inward while this is piercing outward. All right? Chopping, which is same as overturning or opening outward, and then piercing. And then the whole body wraps inward. One is drilling upward, one is wrapping inward. The whole body spinning to chop and open again, and pierce, and then hide the flower and walk. So if we look at it one more time, toeing in, wrapping and drilling, extending, piercing, wrapping and drilling, overturning, opening, chopping, piercing, wrapping, drill, overturn, and walk. The applications here are fairly simple because they're extrapolations of the single palm change and the double palm change. You can see that we have some of the double palm change motion in the spin, but instead of walking back the other way, we're spinning the same way. So this is very useful in situations where I met Nelson's force and he gave me an outward pushing force that allowed me to enter, but I wasn't quite good enough to get him before he closed the line on me. And then I can spin and chop, coming on the vertical circle. So the last one is we spun on the horizontal angle. Right here we're coming on the vertical, right, and then walking again. So that's the simplest application of the ending point of this, is from a position where we meet, I come into pierce, he turns me, and I rotate with him to chop and walk to the back. So at a little bit of speed, we come in and meet, right? Spinning and turning. The opening move can be for situations either where he's grabbing and punching, and I'm retreating, right? Because we started with this little drawing back, wrapping inward movement. So as I retreat, I first of all have his arm here, which allows us to do a throw that we'll look at more closely in the fifth palm, or to set up any kind of arm barring technique. I also can slip loose from this and chop. All right, so as I bar the arm with this inward wrapping, as I drill up, I continue to pull him and set up the chop. And if he defends the chop, then he's vulnerable to the pierce, which attacks the eyes. So on a grab and punch defense, I'm retreating back. All right? What it also sets up is the ability to kick. So if we look at it by wrapping inward and bringing my step to wrap inward, I can unwrap in the other direction with the foot in the hand, or just the hand. Right? And everything, if he defends it, push it off your face, right, is followed by a pierce. Right? If he defends that, I can wrap it again and chop again. So it's mostly this idea of the vertical circle, the wrapping inward to create the vertical circle, wrapping inward off a pierce to create another vertical circle. So again, if we look at the linear technique for the chopping hand is also called the chopping palm. Drawing back, chopping, chop, keeping this on line, and chop again. So draw back, backhand chop, forehand chop, chop again. And when we do it continuously, the chops just keep flowing one into the other. Same, we can do it on circular movements. So if we start moving to the side, so it would be stepping, and then when it's a little faster. Okay, so with a partner, some of the applications are going to be similar to the circular palm, but what we've added in is, rather than a pierce, an extra chop. And this gives us a different way of wrapping again. But now instead of having to come into chopping this way, we're unfolding this way. And we see again the same movements of hiding the flower under the leaf, drilling, extending, overturning. So the simplest applications off of a punch, let's say this hand, fading back to chop down on the elbow, coming above the elbow, and then attacking the face directly. So a little more at speed, fading back. Similarly, I could start that, and as I get here, Nelson covers this one, and then I'm going to bring him the other way and chop on the other side. All right, so if we go back to the first one, the first one could be here if I can catch him. If I can't catch him, it takes above the elbow, which brings him down, and attack. If he covers that, I'm just going to go to the other side, either to the face or to the elbow, stepping through, and ready to chop again. So let's build that one more time, starting with one side to the other side. And slow again. He defends. So I'm opening this way by inserting the body. This hand's already chopping. And then by chopping, we can also attack the eyes, take the elbow, bring him down, and if we're in deep, strike the back. Okay, and then similarly, wrist grabs would be the same kind of technique as the previous one, where we're using the kicking and the covering to get loose from the wrist grab. Attacking, crossing him is another way to use this chop. The fifth palm is the opportunity seizing palm. And as the name implies, there are many, many ways to imply it. Many opportunities that can be seized in different parts of the movement. So to look at the form again, more slowly, starting from walking in the millstone posture. This time, instead of toeing in to make our change, we're going to do a baibu, swing step, and pierce behind us. And walk a full circle to pierce. And then pressing mountain and earth, spiraling, dropping down, to press. The tiger shakes its tail, and strike with the iron-plated boot to walk. As we walk, this hand slowly comes back to the basic position. So on the other side, twisting, wrapping, walking around to drill, drilling and piercing. And this, if you look at it, has extending and inward wrapping at the same time, and then wrapping inward again. One hand wrapping, one hand twisting to drop down low, spiral up. So we have piercing, overturning inward, and wrapping again to press down, wrapping, piercing, and our overturning is kind of hidden here in the dropping of the body. And it comes into play, it's seen more as we walk the circle and come back to the guard position. So, this is the first time we're playing with the high and low elements so much, which didn't really happen in the first 4 palms. So the simplest application, if our hands meet and I pierce, I expect him to parry. I use the push it, lifting heaven, pressing earth position to break his spinal alignment. So if we look at it from the back, let's do the other way. When I pierce, I'm stepping in, drawing his hand behind him as I pin this in place, which locks his hips. Right? I'm using upward twisting and spiraling, downward twisting and spiraling, which is an inward wrapping. This is an outward twisting force. And then I'm breaking his balance right there. Okay, so a little bit quicker. Let's do this side again. Coming in. All right, and one more time, slow. Another way to look at this is we start with this, but instead of coming over, I'm going to come under. I expect again that he's going to stop me. Now, as I extend here, because I don't have his hand, I'm going to take his leg instead. And I'm going to shoot back the other way, which takes him over my leg. So the key here is not to pick him up, but to actually go away from him. So we're piercing in, spiraling upward, which is the start of overturning, while at the same time I'm wrapping inward and twisting as the body weight drops. And then I'm shooting out this way, right, which in the form brings me back to here, but in practice could take me to another opponent. Another application is off of an attack, which again I'm spiraling to get an effect, a drilling outward to get a result while I'm pressing down and wrapping in, is that I can step in alongside of him, right, and throw him this way. And it can be done if I catch his hands like that or even just with one hand. But let's start with the catching hand. So attacking, stepping in around him, and cutting the hip. So let me do it from the other side so you can see that side, right? As I bring his arms this way, my hip strikes against his. And again, I'm turning as though I'm going to walk this way. And my hip bumps his to take him to the outside. If I can't get his other hand, it'll be the same technique. It's punch and punch. I can just come in here and throw him down, or I can insert, just from here, just inserting this way to throw. So give me the front leg, this leg forward, right hand forward, moving to the inside. All right, basically all variations of the same technique over and over again. Stepping in, this is spiraling. So already it breaks his hip alignment. Then when I add my hip to it, it breaks his alignment in a spiral. So I'm using the wrapping, inward twisting forces to create that throw. All right, and then lastly, the phoenix throws its wings. If he presses me and punches, I can use a fading away throw to step across and throw. So that's another variation of the same technique. As he punches, I'm fading back using these spirals, right? One turning inward, one starting to wrap, as though I'm going to go like this, and step across the stance. Let's do that one at speed. So from the grab and punch, he comes in. So that's part of the opportunity seizing palm. The last part is really the kick, which or the hand motions and the kick, which can come into play. Now, if you're punching, which can come into play simply evading to the side. So the sideward evasion, I can kick out, or if I grab the hands using this extended kick to move into him. And that's this part of piercing upward and overturning as I start to move in the form. This is the wrapping force. So again, it can be used multiple ways to wrap, to wrap, to wrap, to move to the side, to move to the side, to move to the side. And these are just hands wrapping continuously. So in the form, it's done without steps, but in practice it can be done with steps. So the fifth single movement that goes with opportunity seizing palm, to some degree we're using the movement of the heaven and earth palm here, and that's reflected in the single movement which is called the heaven and earth palm. So stepping forward and piercing, striking low and striking high from the old monk posture. And then toeing in. This would be the simplest way to do it. And then we could add more spiral stepping. And that allows us to add different changes with the feet that you saw used in some of the throws earlier. So if Nelson comes out, the simplest is to attack high and attack low. Right? That's similar to one of the applications we did in the Dingshi, where we went in for a straight low attack. So here we're first attacking high to draw him high. Maybe he'll raise his center of gravity up, which allows me to get the bottom. All right, again, if we step back for a second and look at this, it's a whole combination of spirals, wraps, twists, and overturns. Right? I'm overturning this way. At the same time, I'm drilling up. Right? And then twisting and going down to wrap, coming back to twist outward and drill again while this hand's twisting inward. And then drilling, wrapping, twisting, striking down, wrapping, piercing out, overturning, to do it again. So it's an endless chain of the same thing over and over again. And you can just emphasize it different ways. You can emphasize it as a pierce, or you can emphasize it as an overturning, twisting move. It's just a question of the step. So in this case, very simple. I'm using a piercing outward movement, then I'm twisting and striking downward, right, which starts me into the wrapping movement. So a little bit quicker, our hands meet, attack low. Right? As an alternative, you can also attack the knee. So it would be better against a taller opponent with longer legs. Then I might not go for the hip, I might go for the knee and lock it out. Now, if we extrapolate that one more step, so I go low, but he just drops his elbow. I go high. All right? And again, if we use this twisting, spiraling force, it automatically will create an arm bar. Again, he's going to probably stop this one too, so now I'm going to emphasize the overturning force while I drill with the other hand. And that forces him into a very bad position so that even if he steps out of that one, he's vulnerable low and high on the other side. All right, and then just to add one more element to it, I'm not really adding my legs in except as steps. But we can add this dimension of every move can have a leg attack. So when he blocks this one, I'm attacking the knee. So now I'm also using the idea of inward, wrapping, twisting, spiraling outward, and overturning in the legs actions, right? Whether I step in here and sweep to wrap inward, whether I went on the inside and when he defends low, wrapping to the outside, which breaks his stance. You can also see now that this knee can spiral as though I'm going to step like this. Right? And similarly, you can see how the throws are created, that if I'm coming over the top by spiraling inward, I can also create these throws that we did earlier that take him over the top. If they're defended, same principle, we're just going back out again. So it's this endless, continuous spirals that you're trying to achieve here. So the sixth palm is called the flowing step palm, or the step flowing palm. Again, we're walking the circle. We're going to go back to our toe-in step, drilling, piercing, piercing again. So basically the single palm change. Now we're going to add something where we turn and pull down. 10-ton weight falls to the ground, and then followed by rhinoceros gazes at the moon. And then hiding flower under leaf and flowing to walk. So again, we have a single palm change, almost complete. Turning, pulling down, rhinoceros gazes at the moon, hiding flower under leaf, and walking into a flowing step. So key points to remember in this is when we pull down, it can't be into the body, but it needs to be over the knee. When we strike up, it's an extension of the spine. So the image of a rhinoceros is horn, gazing upward. He has to use his back to do it. He can't just turn his head like this. That the body extends like that. If we look at that in terms of our four principles, again, we have drilling, twisting, right? Drilling again, piercing, and then we're wrapping and twisting, pulling down, right? Which is another type of wrapping force. If we really follow this through, it becomes a wrapping force. But we're going to stop it right here. And then drilling up again. And then wrapping to hide the flower, overturning, opening, extending to walk. So there are many ways to apply this, but a lot of them involve this pulling force. The simplest one is from a situation where I go into pierce. He stops me and I turn and throw him over the top. All right, so now we see why the posture when sitting, the hips have to go back, but I have to maintain the alignment. And there's a bending forward like this that brings the hips into his body. So again, as I come in and Nelson blocks, I'm turning, bringing my hips in, and throwing him up and over. All right, and done quickly, but I won't take him over the top. Yeah, a little faster. All right, alternatively, I don't have to throw him. It can just be a break and elbow strike to the back. Similarly, if I just pull down and Nelson punches, I'm going to use my upward drilling forces again. And I'm already overturning here as this one strikes. Right? And this is also overturning because its follow-through starts me as though I'm going to walk in the millstone posture. So as we meet, I wrap and pull. If he brings the other hand, I'm striking up to the face. So as soon as I pull, just come in. Right? This way. Okay, so looking at the linear version of this form, very similar to the circular version, but just moving straight ahead from the old monk position, pulling down and forward. So it's almost like I'm hooked on something and bringing the body to the hands, and then striking up with the rhinoceros gazes at the moon. And turning. And then we can make it more of a flowing step. So with walking steps. So the applications are not going to be that different, but instead of spinning to break, we're going to do it more small motion, pulling down. Now, in this case, there's a little more implication of grabbing flesh or grabbing points to come in because I want to pull myself in, and that's what pulls him down. So again, if you look at that, I won't grab hard this time. Twisting and spiraling the other way, right? And then pulling down. So I'm starting to create this wrapping force that takes me to the outward movement. So pulling down to draw him down. Either that brings him down, or he throws the other hand. And then striking the same as before, with the rhinoceros gazing at the moon. So we have the upward spiraling, overturning force. Upward drilling, overturning force. So again, a little quicker, pulling down, striking up. And then a more direct attack. If he comes out with something, I can meet it and just take his space. So here, I have to emphasize the body coming in as I wrap a little bit more, the body moving forward, creating a whole wrapping force this way before I extend into him, and using basically his own resistance to me coming in to draw myself inside of his guard. Okay, so we'll look at that a little bit quicker. His hand comes out, I'm moving in, and let's try that one more time. Moving in. We'll look at the seventh palm now, the downward dropping palm. So again, start walking the circle. Similar to the fifth palm, we start with a Baibu step and wrapping inward. But now we strike low as this one wraps inward to cover the face. And then turning, twisting, spiraling back the other way in a drilling, cutting strike. And then wrapping back to strike again. Hiding the flower, which is wrapping, drilling, overturning to walk the other way. So looking at it again on the other side. Baibu, walk 2 more steps. Twist the hands and strike low. And then rotate the whole spine so that the hands twist and strike. One hand drilling, chopping, one hand wrapping, twisting, and then reverse it. So now this hand is spiraling outward and this one's twisting to chop. Wrapping, drilling, overturning. One more time. On the Baibu. So just some simple applications of this. From an inside position, he's in a guard position, our hands meet. I'm coming in to strike low while I'm threatening with this. So this is spiraling downward. It's actually drilling, but instead of up, drilling down. This one's wrapping inward to threaten the face, which forces him to press inward a little, and I can turn that into a chop. Okay, that takes him down this way. So again, from the standpoint of a meeting position, attacking low immediately, as soon as our hands meet, I'm creating 2 forces, one that takes him this way and one that spirals into the space I've created. As soon as I feel resistance here, this one chops the neck, and that can be a takedown. By the same idea, if I start that action and he withdraws a little to create a void space for me to fall into, I can change and chop on the outside. And this is setting us up for that same single palm change movement. So again, if we look at it with our 4 forces, I move to the inside, twisting, drilling. As he defends this, I'm drilling and cutting the other way. As this one turns back, and then as he presses me, turning and chopping. Right? So this is like an overturning hand going to the outside. So at speed, coming in, we meet. All right, one more time. Coming in. The linear movement for number 7 at first doesn't look so much like the form because it seems to be 3 straight pierces, but we're using this same movement of outward wrapping and lower drilling to begin it, which is inserting the flowers into the armpit, followed by the phoenix enters the nest, right, which is the same as this, but twisting the other way, and then piercing to cover the action at the end, which is the same as finishing by overturning. So, twisting, wrapping inward to create this punch to the body, which is again the start of an outward spiral, while this one twists inward again. And then that becomes an inward wrap, as this one pierces out. So let's look at it more continuous. Very simple with just a single step first. And turn. And then we can do it a little more smoothly where the body can step up to gain ground. And turn. So stepping, as I come in, stepping up, punching, coming out. Stepping up, punching, stepping out. Okay, so with a partner, we can start from the old monk position where I've given him something to occupy him and attack the middle. I don't expect to really get him with this one. I expect to let this one go in. So it's very similar to the way we used the chop earlier by starting with coming in here and then punching as he tries to cover that, even if he presses it down, rather than the outward chop, we're going to this time just go direct and pierce. So looking at it a little quicker, coming to the inside to attack. All right, more simply, coming to the outside. So we meet hands, I meet him with the drilling hand, and then turn it into the twisting force and wrapping force to attack the ribs. So as our hands meet, or it could be off of a grab as well, it would be the same technique. We come in to attack the armpit. As he defends that by dropping the elbow, this one attacks high. So again, what's key here is I create a slight void in the body by the wrapping force that allows me to enter deep. And as he defends, this one then attacks. If he steps out to cover himself, I'm going back to the millstone, which is the overturning force again. So again, on a quicker pace on that, coming in. Alternatively, just shifting to the side with it. So if he's in this lead, and he brings the front hand out, shifting to the side to create the attack, or against the front hand, shifting the other way to create the first attack. And now I'm mixing it up, where I'm going to throw this one first, and as he defends that, I'm going to come in with the second one. So you're going to back up on the first one, right? So if you come in with the jab, I'm moving here. As you defend to get out, I'm coming in with this one. And then my last one is the twisting force again, to press him down while this one pierces out. Okay, the flat penetrating palm or flat piercing palm is the 8th palm change. So its emphasis is on this flat kind of piercing as opposed to the spiraling upward piercing. So from the toe in, we have a timing of 1, 2, right? And then pierce again. Spin and cut upward, pierce, hide the flower, and walk. So by fading the body, we can create this inward wrapping force, piercing out, which is again overturning, piercing out, and now wrapping inward to spin and pierce upward while twisting inward. Again, wrapping to set up the pierce, hide the flower, overturn, walk. So one more time. 3 pierces. So this palm references this statement that is famous in the Bhagavad poems, even gods and ghosts fear the 3 penetrations. In that 3 things that come in an unpredictable timing, one upon the other, are difficult to block. So if we look at just that piece, the flat piercing, when our hands meet, he's coming in to press me. This hand's going to come out. But instead of it being a 1, 2 timing, it's going to be a half beat, 2 half beats. So we're playing with the rhythm, and then the third one comes. All right, so the timing here as our hands meet is 1, 2, 3 to pierce. So targets, for safety, I'm going to the top of the forehead, but actual targets can be the throat, the eyes, catching the nose and piercing the eyes to take him back. All right, I can also make them palm strikes where it's more of a flat palm hitting. Right? But this tends to get, the reason for the use of the penetrating palm of the eyes is it always draws a reaction because people have to blink or move their head. So as soon as I get the reaction, the third one comes. Okay, in this case, where we get stopped, then I'm going to grab the arm and throw. Let's take that on a different angle. So again, if I set up the penetrating palms and he retreats and defends a little bit, I'm going to take that and throw him by using this movement, which comes after the 3 penetrations. So one more time. I think we, throw you that way, right? So from here, he comes in with something. 1, 2. I didn't get it that time, so I take the other arm. All right, we'll try it again. So again, he comes in. 1, 2, 3. And throw. The other thing we need to think about is, although I can time it exactly like the form, in fact, we can play with the timing so that when I meet, it could be pierce, retreat, pierce, pierce, and then double pierce. Or any combination like that of 3 or 4 pierces where I set a rhythm of a 1, and then once he adapts to that rhythm, a 1, 2. So let's look at the linear movement now that's associated with this palm. From the old monk holds up the alms bowl. There's 2 ways, a horizontal or a vertical, because this palm contains both a horizontal. In a sense, this is both horizontal and vertical. There's a force going this way, but there's also a downward force. This is an upward force, and then we have the downward force at the end. So we need to do it 2 ways so we take advantage of both, and then we can mix them so it's neither horizontal nor vertical. So first, moving on the horizontal. Backhand, forehand, forehand, and punch. All right, the key with this is that my hand can cross the center line. The same problem, if the opponent ducks, he's going to end up on the outside. So it has to stay on the center line and draw back on the center line. So done with a little smoother footwork where we're moving to the side, we can walk with it and change direction, and walk with it and change direction. And that adds some other dynamics for application. And then on the vertical circle, so again, from the old monk, drawing back, coming on the vertical. So if we look at those 2 movements, again, I have this idea of wrapping, spiraling outward or overturning, wrapping, and then twisting, drilling, overturning. If we look at it on the vertical, I have, you see right from the get-go, the drilling and overturning, and then overturning, but they also contain wrapping, because the follow-through of this is to start to wrap the body in with the ribs, wrap the arm in rather from the ribs. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, and then the same ending where we have twisting, drilling, and overturning. So let's look at that in application. One simple thing is just to look at the first move. So if he sets up this way and punches with the front hand, I'm using this to create an opening. As he presses that one out, he sets up these. All right. The other is to take it from the outside, which is a little safer. So as I meet the outside, I'm coming to the side to strike the ear. If he manages to defend that, so if I take it from a straight punch from the outside, this tries to hit. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And then he opens the center to me. And that sets up another series of strikes. So we can look at it from let's do it faster from this side, the left side. Yeah, so I'm coming here, right? And then this one hits. So again, moving here to strike, and take down. And then on the vertical, he comes in to punch, coming over to strike the head. If he moves back, I'm coming over again and then striking the middle. Right? So a little bit quicker, retreating, coming down, and up the middle. Right? and going off the midline. Again, he punches, I'm going off the midline, which gives me a different angle on things. So it allows for these quick changes where I'm walking one circle and then the other circle. All right, and again, the same forces are in play. I'm walking off, drilling, overturning this hand first, overturning into wrapping. The wrapping brings him down like this. So he maintains by bending his elbow, relaxing. Then I come this way to overturn. And I'm starting to wrap as I set this technique up. And at that point, the throw happens. So that completes the DVD for Laobao, the old 8 palms. What we want to remember is the 4 forces continuously operating. We've tried to show them kind of separated in the techniques, but in fact, to some degree, you're doing all of them all the time. One is just more obvious. Also, it's good to remember that originally there were probably just the single and double palm change, and that all the other changes are simply variants or extrapolations of the ideas contained in those 2 changes. And there are Bagua practitioners who've never done more than that in Dingshi and are quite proficient. So it's not about the moves, it's about the movements that they're teaching you in your body. And the variations in footwork, tactical ideas in confronting an opponent that just give you more flexibility. So let's look at it one more time. If we look at the old monk, holds up the alms bowl, to hiding the flower underneath, to drilling upward, and the millstone posture, we basically have the key principles that are in every one of these movements. And the key footwork also of stepping forward, toeing out, toeing in, toeing out again with a flowing step as the body comes to walk. I've shown them mainly in these more static ways, but it can be more flowing in the sense of when we pierce, the body can draw back and walk. So we can create space with each step as you become more fluid with it. But until the body's rooted and connected in the basic movements, you don't want to practice it that way. This form was actually taught to me by Wang Shutang, who is a disciple of Guo Gemin. And it differs from the Laobao of other people who also learn from Guo Gemin because different people bring to the forms different things. So the key again is to think about the principles and not become fixated on the form itself. Another version of Laobao was taught to me by students of Li Ziming, particularly Zhang Huasun. And even within Li's group, different students execute it slightly differently. So I'm going to perform that version just so you can see variance in the basic movements. Li's form also emphasizes some specific applications that are only implied in the other version. And he uses a slightly different take on the stepping and the piercing palm and the wrapping force. The wrapping force is much more hidden in his form, and the piercing palm is much more accentuated. So just before we start to look at the single palm change very simply in Wang Shutang's form, the first one uses this upward piercing palm, which already has the exaggerated drilling force in it. And then it emphasizes the wrapping, rising, drilling, falling, overturning. In Li's palm, his emphasis is on the piercing palm with a flat pierce, where we're using this so-called ox tongue palm. Hiding the thumb inside so it won't catch on cloth, so it'll slide better. And then, so again, if we look at it again, turning, piercing, and going right to the drilling and overturning without emphasizing the wrapping. So it's key in this that as you develop this piece becomes more and more hidden until it just becomes a very short motion. And that's one difference in their palms. But in essence, the interior body action is no different. I still have turning. I still have my wrapping is more hidden here. Right? And instead of wrapping at this point, here we just go straight to drilling and overturning. So it'll be the wrapping force that is most hidden in Li's palms. 2 years ago, I did a book on Liang style Bagua with Gao Jiwu in Beijing. He's a very respected teacher of the Liang style who mixes both Yin's Fu lineage with Liang style lineage through his grandfather and father. It's called The Essentials of Bagua Zhang, and it presents many of the same concepts that are being presented in these 3 volumes of DVDs. The Dingshi is covered in detail along with memorized poems that are helpful in remembering the key points of holding each posture. The Bagua Lian one is covered in detail with pictures of every movement. And there's a theoretical discussion about Bagua, Neigong, standing postures, and the basic principles of Bagua, as well as some elements about kicking and joint locking. So if you like these DVDs, this book may be very useful to your practice.